Welcome to another episode of Energy Bites. I'm Bobby Nealon. I'm here with my trusty co-host, the Rad Dad, John Calfan.
Hey, everybody.
And we've got Marc Hebert with us from Dakota Analytics, down from Calgary. He's the, I think, second Canadian we've had. So
Yeah.
Good.
But welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
Fun
for
to be here.
coming.
Yeah.
But usually just kind of start off, kind of let people know who you are, and then really want to dive into like, all right, how did you first even get into technology, or even or oil and gas, or both, and just where did it go, and how do we get to where we're at today, and then we can kind of dive in on all the different cool things you guys do.
Yeah. So I work for a company called Dakota Analytics, primarily based in Canada, but we are now in the States the past couple of years, in large part with help with Funk Futures, who helped us kind of.
Shout out to Jeremy.
Yeah. Shout out to Jeremy. Breaking into the space. We're about 50 consultants. We only do data and analytics. We don't do anything else. So people trying to get us to pitch FTC systems, I'm like, we don't do any of that stuff. So we're all data and analytics. We work at about 40 oil and gas clients, say like last month. That's how many places we would have invoiced.
Nice.
And like just doing a ton of different projects. So a lot of our focus is like in kind of the basics. So a lot of like mid-market kind of companies, not the huge ones that have a huge team, not Grayson Mill because they're fantastic already, but some of the ones that are just either starting out, or can't build a basic LOS report without doing data dump stuff. So my history, I started at Dakota 11 or 12 years ago, but prior to that, I used to work at a company called Gordon's, the fishermen. Yeah. So
is that up in Boston?
Just outside of Boston,
Okay.
a town called Gloucester. Worked there for 10 years, started out doing ERP, believe it or not.
Fun stuff.
Yep. And decided that it was more fun to work in the data analytics space because you got to work with a little more creative people, I would argue, like trying to solve some weird, crazy, different problems. So migrated into that, did a bunch of Microsoft stuff. This is way back in the day.
Yep.
And then got recruited to move out to Calgary and work with Dakota Analytics. So my
Okay,
wife moved to Calgary.
So you're
not having
managing director, correct?
Technically, my title is managing partner.
Partner.
So there's myself and two other gentlemen.
Okay, so you were not the founder.
No, the founders. So the name Dakota Analytics came from the founder went to the University of North Dakota.
Okay.
So he's trying to come up with a name. We're not based in North or South Dakota. We're just, that's just where the name came from. And it's kept, and hopefully we have a decent brand.
Yeah. No, naming a company is one of those things that I get. I will spend days like going through and iterating products, companies.
RDS, trying to come up with the right name for our dashboard or whatever it was. And
Well, and it's funny too, because the oil field is generally horrible about, it's like this engineering service or this very ambiguous name, like, what was it?
we just go with any of the
any of the
that have done,
abbreviations,
like the pharmacy companies.
Yeah. Now you have the trend of EMPs trying to sound like tech companies, but naming stuff is a strangely unique thing.
I think it's one of those. I think it either just really doesn't matter, or if it's really bad, I think it can be a bad thing. But I mean, like in general, some of it's just like don't overcomplicate it and roll with it. I mean, Dakota's a fine name. It's like
it's hard to be descriptive with a name, and IT's lots of acronyms.
Yeah.
So like let's call it ABC, right? And you're like, what? No one's going to know what that means.
No, and like that's the thing. I think a lot of people don't think it's important, but then you get onto the kind of marketing media side, and it's like even Energy Bites, for example, there is some kind of energy supplement company that makes a product called Energy Bites, and it's spelled with a Y, just like ours. So
I think there even is an Energy Bites podcast. Like I think I saw
probably, but just things like that, right? Like going and looking, and like, hey, is there other stuff that pops up when I Google this that is going to be competing with me for SEO or for, even just handles on your social channels and all that stuff. It's, I feel like it's slowly getting more and more important these days, but
I learned about the lesson and the brand when I worked back at Gordon's, and like they were talking about how long, when you go to the grocery store to buy something, whatever, like a bag of sugar, and how long it takes you to make that decision. And it's somewhere between like 0.2 and 1 second or something. Like it's just, you have a small amount of time, you just grab the thing you need. And like, so they're just looking a lot of times like, oh, there's the Gordon's Fisherman. I recommend that.
Right.
That's going to be good. And I'll get that.
Yeah.
And that it's as simple as that. It's not what's on sale or any of those sort of other factors.
Yeah. One thing I think I was thinking about a couple of years ago, we were talking, and I was always wondering, like, say dish soap. Like my parents use Dawn. I use Dawn. I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
Like, do I even think about trying Joy or whatever. No, I just go to grab. Like there's some interesting things that have just become.
So I would like to think that that's how the Dakota Analytics brand is, but I'm not entirely sure that's true. But
so you guys are pretty big in Canada, and you're starting to make your way here. I mean, or of that split, you said like 40 companies. How many would you say are
about 20% of our business right now is in the States.
Cool. Okay.
So we've been doing reasonably well. I don't think a lot of people feel the space that we're in.
Yeah.
We're at a big enough size where we've got like continuity and we can staff a team of 1 to 20 people. And then there's competitors out there. So not to diss our competition, but there's not a lot of people that have the scope and size, but then also have the experience of having to do it. The average Dakota employee's worked for us for, I don't know, probably 6 years.
Yeah.
7 years. So it's a pretty good longevity that like, I use this as an example all the time. There's oil sands in Canada. We did a competing demo 6-7 years ago with a company, which I will not name. And they called heavy oils called bitumen, and they called it bitumen. And I was like, we knew at that point we were going to win that opportunity.
Yeah, it's like spelling frack with a K on a press release or something. I immediately take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Let's back up a minute. You personally, kind of growing up, or when did you really get interested in kind of tech, software, BI kind of stuff?
So went to school in New Jersey, went to Rutgers for a couple of years, got into ERP, just thought it was really interesting. Really like the idea of using technology to change someone's life. Sounds a bit corny, but I really like that. That's kind of the joy in work for me. So getting into that and then doing more data analytics, which is pretty progressive, is kind of a good space to be in. So started doing that when I worked at Gordon's, and then for the past 12 years doing that with Dakota Analytics. And what I love about the energy space is there's always this debate, is it simple or complicated? It's fairly complicated. Like relative to other businesses,
for sure.
It's grow or die, right? So those are the businesses or kinds of businesses that I want to be in for data and analytics, because it's very true. So Gordon's is consumer products. You grow 3%. It's a good year.
Yeah.
Right. On average. I wouldn't say that for Gordon specifically, but if you work for General Mills, 3%. But in oil and gas, you go 3%. Like Grayson Mill won't be around. They're growing 3% a year. That's not, no one's publishing those as their goals, right? So that's what I really like about it, and doing it for 12 years.
What you've had, I was looking at your LinkedIn earlier today. You've kind of done like BI stuff with a lot of different kind of energy companies facing folks, as well as obviously at Dakota, but kind of talk us through, what are some interesting stories or even horror stories that you've come across? Because it's really interesting, in my opinion, to kind of see like the evolution of a topic or a subject in the industry over time, just because I think sometimes it comes full circle, and other times it's like you can see where everyone else was doing this one way, and then somebody else came and did it differently and really kind of leapfrogged or started setting the bar much higher. And
for sure, like I'll give you a couple stories come to mind. So one, and this was pretty repeatable, but we'll engage with a company to do some work, and one or two, I'll call them super users or power users, will latch on to like seeing the vision, seeing how fast and how much better that they can get at their role. A couple of them reported it right into the CEO. So they were like sort of the right-hand person to the CEO in terms of getting information, whatever it might be. Okay. And they latched onto these tools and said, hey, we need, the automation and the integration and all those things, that reporting, slice and dice ability to do ad hoc analytics, latched onto it. And inside of 12 months, 2 people in the exact same role, they just moved one to a totally different role, sort of not reporting to the CEO, and they promoted this other person. And like they'd all worked in the same role for the past 3 or 4 years. And in the course of 12 months, this person, only because I would say they were leveraging the tools and saw the vision, just took it kind of to the next level.
Yeah.
And I see that happen a lot. And I use the analogy all the time, like people are building houses and you take a hammer and a bunch of nails and you start pounding them in. And data analytics specifically, and maybe Dakota Analytics, is like the nail gun.
Right.
So I'm like, if Bobby's got a nail gun and John has a hammer, this race is not going to last very long.
No.
Like in a couple of days, the foreman's going to be like, we need another Bobby.
Shit. The end of the day.
Yeah.
Even.
So what's always interesting to me is when we come and say, hey, we've got the nail gun, right? Or we're trying to describe that vision, how many people are resistant to it? And I think for me, that's the biggest thing about data analytics, is like, we're really enablers of change.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. Right. And the hardest part for every data analytics project is the people. It's not really the technology.
Yeah,
we can talk about technology today and stuff, but that's not really the challenge.
It's like the behavior.
Yeah, Bobby and I were talking on Monday, and it's like, yeah, I mean, we were talking about Snowflake and Databricks, like which one's better? And it's like, it's going to depend if you like driving a Toyota or a Ford or whatever, right? Like they're just cars, but it's really about that people. And what gets me jazzed about it is just having people that are getting excited about it. And then similar story. We did an implementation for a company. They had a bunch of accounting people, pretty tight deadlines around their accounting close process and that stuff. It's taking them somewhere between like 8 to 10 days to do a close. Lots of process in there, really difficult. So lots of them had like young kids. So for those, 3-4 days before you publish your results, like they're in the office till 12, 1, 2, like, and it's always funny because I tell the junior people in our group, like, no, it really matters. I'm like, well, why does it matter? I'm like, you don't get to call the street and tell them we're going to publish our results a little later. And implementing some of the solutions to automate all their reporting processes, like they're home at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And I had a woman like almost in tears a couple of years ago that was like, you've changed my life.
Yeah.
And she told me some stuff I won't share on the podcast, but like, this has really like impacted my family life, and it was tough, and we were getting babysitters and like doing all that stuff. And now I'm home.
Right.
I was like, well, that's the stuff that, I mean, the bills are going to get paid, but that's the stuff that really gets you jazzed about doing the work.
No, I mean, I think that's the dream state, I think, of most kind of tech, especially on the data side, right? Like the data analytics, business intelligence stuff is make your life easier, allow you to focus more on what, they hired you to do, what computers can't do, what AI can't do. And ultimately the goal of that is to allow you to have more time to do whatever you actually like doing and being at home, spending it with your family, all of those things. So it's and I mean, our industry is just so ripe for that across so many spaces. So it's cool.
I have a question for you guys. Like, do you feel like, I would say a decade ago, the sentiment that I heard was like oil and gas they're not data savvy. They're behind the times. They're kind of Neanderthals when it comes to the data analytics space.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way anymore. Do you guys feel that way?
I don't feel it. I mean, I think it's even gotten better in the last couple of years. I mean, I think even like 5 years ago, people were like, oh, we're so far behind. I think we've had the conversation before though too, but I think when you throw in how much risk is involved in some of this stuff, especially on the actual physical side of it, like you can't run machine learning algorithms in the field that you can run, on a marketing campaign, like, because the risk is way bigger. Like, but no, I think it's definitely caught up. I mean, I think people always undersell. Like, you talk to someone in healthcare, oh, we're so far behind. You talk to someone in other industries, oh, we're so far behind. Everyone thinks that they're behind. Like, I mean, I think it's relative to your industry too. Like, are you solving the problems you need to solve, with the technology that's available? But,
and I think, another component of it that I've kind of thought of over the years is, I mean, oil price drives a lot of this. And I don't mean that to say that high oil prices means we throw more money at software and analytics and stuff. It's actually typically the opposite, right? Like downturns force people to find new ways to be creative and cut costs and automate things and streamline things and try new technology because they have to, because oil is $35 a barrel and their break-even price is $30 a barrel currently, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I came in 2010 as a field engineer, and when prices are above $80, $100 a barrel, at least historically, the mindset has always been get it out of the ground as fast as we can before it drops back below that price, right? And so people aren't necessarily as prone to do testing or data, spend money in areas that isn't deemed necessary, so to speak, because if I can shave $2, does it really matter if price is $100 or $102 a barrel off my operating costs? It doesn't. It's more about getting it out as quickly as we can. And so these downturns actually end up, in my opinion, spawning a ton of innovation and change in the industry because we're essentially forced to, right? And so that's
to do more with less,
right?
That's what, like you were saying before we got on here, the best way to do that is with computers. That's what they were made for.
Yeah.
We get the most interest in that like $50 to $60 oil range.
Yeah.
Where it's like we're profitable, so we're not trying to squeeze a penny, but it's not. Yeah. When oil was $140, everyone was like,
I'm going to waste my time. I'm not going to throw resources at.
I was going to say that's the other problem.
Data warehouse.
They're like, let's
put
go
a hole in the ground.
Let's go for long lunches at Morton's because we're whatever, anywhere we stick a hole in the ground, we're going to be profitable.
Well, and it also gets to the point too where resources become a problem, right? Like if oil is so high and they can't get enough people in seats, like 2 years into my career and from 12 to 14, I mean, they were just hiring kids straight out of school into completion engineer roles to basically manage paper and documentation stuff because they had so much activity going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then they weren't able to find it. Like, you need more resources the more the higher oil prices are, because the more wells you're going to drill and all this stuff. And so that means you don't have the time or the resources, personnel primarily, to focus on a new thing or trying out a new technology. It's just blow and go, versus, to your point, once prices kind of get in that stable $50, $60 range, people are making money. They're not making a ton of money. So, and the activity is slowed down. So they actually have time to potentially go try things out, try and figure out how we're going to implement these new things, and it actually makes a bigger impact on the business, percentage wise. It's definitely an interesting industry because of that, for sure. But I agree with Bobby as well. Prior to coming here, I worked at an edge computing startup and sold into retail, manufacturing, and some even cellular. And a lot of people are in that same boat where it's like, we're decades behind or a decade behind or we're slow or whatever. I think, the biggest thing to me is like, it really just depends on when the industry started and how long they've been around. And, is the company that you're working with in that industry a fairly new company, or have they been around for 30 years? Because that changes what their tech stack's going to look like. It changes how they approach technology and all that stuff, right? Like if you're a plant and you've been operating for 50 years, you're probably running on a rather old version of Windows on virtual machines on-prem somewhere, versus if you're a brand new one, you have a completely different arsenal because you're starting fresh with modern tech instead of having to figure out how to rip and replace. And
this is what I find most interesting. Remember, we work at about 40 different companies. I have exposure to maybe 20 of them. The companies that are really progressive on like data, and I mean this from a culture standpoint, not like working with Dakota, that are really progressive, they're the best ones.
Yeah.
Like I'll write them down for you guys after the session. You can file it away and go look at it in 24 months.
Yeah.
And you'll see that those are the companies that are doing extraordinarily well.
Yeah.
Like the executive teams and leadership teams that really focus on that, it's such a huge differentiator, right? And I don't mean IT did. I mean like a lot of mostly engineering, who can produce a barrel a little bit cheaper. It's those companies that are being really progressive that ultimately are going to win. And I've seen the opposite side of that,
right?
Where everyone's like, you know what, just dump some data out and we'll do our LOS reporting at a area level or state level, and we won't worry about it. And then as soon as prices go down, it's really hard to change the culture of your group to do stuff a little bit differently.
Well, and then on top of that, you don't have the money to implement any change because prices are so low, right?
It's too late at that point.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. At that point, someone's making an offer like, you know what, we can operate that well, or this group of wells much cheaper. So let's just buy them, and that makes sense financially.
No, I definitely agree with you. And I think that's been a consistent theme across most of our guests is it's got to be almost organization wide. Like it's a culture, it's a mentality, it's a top down and bottom up. It can't just be one or the other. Because you start getting
one thing is it can't come from the middle.
Yeah,
too. I mean,
absolutely.
It's tough to come from the middle. I mean,
no, it's usually a leadership thing.
Yeah.
I can, there's a company that we work with, or actually we don't work with them now, but we worked with them for 3 or 4 years, and their CIO at the time was like super invested in data. He knew that was the differentiator. And I had a great conversation a few weeks ago with kind of the leader of that data team. And I was saying, we're talking about a project. It's like, this could save you guys $1 million. Okay. Just as an example. And he's like, yeah, no, my boss won't even want to talk about $1 million. Like it's not even on the table. He's like, unless we're talking about like 10 to 20 to $30 million, like take the expense out. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Unless we're trying to like catch a big fish. It's like, I don't want to do it. And it was like, I almost fell out of my chair, right? Because I was like, hey, let's spend a little bit of money and we'll save $1 million. Who's going to not want to do that?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, that's not even close to big enough.
5-6 salaries and benefits.
We're fishing for minnows.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what happens when price gets above $80, $90 a barrel. People start
well, the other thing that's
worrying
interesting,
less about it.
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting is like they believe that that savings is there, right? So by being innovative, they think they're going to reduce their op costs 10, 20, 30 million a year. Like that's stuff that you're going to talk with the board about.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
But if you guys come in and save $1 million one time, it's like, well,
what else?
Where else can we find another $1 million?
Well, that's our business model, right? Ours is sort of like, we're going to try to build a brand where we're helping, and then that leads to more work for us. So like, we're all project based, but we're hoping one project leads to another project, leads to another project. And
so let's talk about the business model a little bit, because I mean, like, honestly, when I first heard about you guys, I was like, that's exactly how I would do consulting if I did it. We've talked about this a little bit.
Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one can see, but I'm sliding a duffel bag of cash across
under the table
right now.
No, but I mean, we've implemented some certain tools at GME, and I'm like, well, man, if I ever got out and did my own consulting, I would do it this way, because so can you kind of talk about kind of the modular almost approach? And it's almost a blend between like a product and consulting. And just kind of how that works. Because I mean, obviously you can come in and do a totally greenfield thing if you needed to, but you guys have a lot of stuff in place. So just kind of speak to that.
So general rule, new companies starting out, they don't have automated LOS reporting. I'll use that as an example. So we come in, because we've done so many of these projects before, we're going to implement a framework, error handling, reporting, the integration. If you need to do master data or data cleansing, we would do that sort of stuff, and we publish a solution. So we would like to think that we could do it, 30, 40, 50% faster than someone just starting from scratch, because we've got a lot of code and things we can drop in. So we'll come in and do a project. Again, we call it a solution. It's hard to make it a product, because everyone's doing a little different. Just simplicity of like, if you're an oil company versus gas company, what you want to look at, transportation, all that stuff could be tracked differently. So 70, 80% is the same. You go implement it. Hopefully the client's happy, they get good use out of it. And then they say, hey, can you help us do this and do this and do this? So we do mostly project work, come in, do that, build out projects, and that just sort of leads to more projects. Yeah. So that's kind of our model. Yeah, it's not really software, because we don't sell any software.
Yeah.
But it's a solution that if we did LOS reporting for Grayson Mill and then switched and did it for company X, and you looked at the two, you'd be like, this looks pretty similar.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, there's just probably minor differences, say on let's just call it, you guys did a lot of Power BI. So the Power BI report is a lot of the same guts. I mean, I feel like up to a certain point, there's a lot of the wiring, but I mean, after that, and then tweaking some stuff downstream a little bit, but I mean. Yeah.
How you group accounts, how you group your wells into different reporting areas, like how you define what gross is, or how you net stuff out, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Those are all like the nuances.
Yeah, right.
I hope that's the value of it, because we're really customizing it to whatever the customer needs.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe a differentiator for Dakota. It's like, we really want to build a product that you're going to leverage the most.
Right.
Again, the idea being around change management is like, how do I produce the report that you want with the least amount of change for that business person? Because they have to go do their job a different way, right? Yeah. So that's why I find with a lot of the software packages that implement stuff, software in general is fairly rigid in terms of like what you're going to get. And if that is too different from your current business process, it can be difficult to get adoption.
Yeah.
And we've all been through they're
going to work around it because they need to get stuff done.
Yeah. We've all been in that world where, you're like, this software is awesome. You implement it, and then like 6 months down the road, no one's using it. And you're like, wait, what happened? It's like, it's just too different from their business process. Right. And everybody's busy. So,
yeah, no, I mean, that I've never thought about it that way, but it does make a lot of sense on the kind of consulting side. Just, you have a framework, so to speak, right? It's not necessarily templatized, but 80-ish% of the legwork is mostly done because most people do things in a handful of ways. But the benefit of it is, instead of buying a out of the box software that, is super structured, locked down, and, maybe it's got an API or whatever, but even then it's like, okay, well, now I've got to figure out how to structure it how I would do it versus how they want me to do it. Or, I need this data to flow into this other thing. And so now I've got to figure out the whole API into databases and all that stuff, versus, hey, we can give you, the same product, but it's actually better because it's completely customized to your architecture, where you can get it where you expect to receive it, how you expect to receive it, and how we can have it flow exactly where you need it to go without you having to do all this extra crap.
And that's for business people, like that's one of the big things, because we have an engagement. We're on site effectively for, a month, 2 months, 3 months, however long. Being there and having that regular communication, which really is knowledge transfer, training, you boil down, and being able to do that versus like when you implement software, it's rare, let's say never, but it's rare for like, I use Peloton to drop someone into a client site for like, hey, this person will be here for 6 months, just help you if you have questions.
That's walking everyone through.
Well,
that's not how it works.
Either
right?
you're going to pay a lot of money for those.
They'll happily do it. You're going to pay.
You don't see it happen a lot. That's my point. Whereas for us, like that is the model. Like we literally want to sit at the client site. We want to have the water cooler talk. We want to build trust and help you understand like what are your actual pain points, right? For like things that you want to resolve. And that is what brings trust. And that's how we build our brand up, and that's how we get more work. We don't do a ton of marketing and stuff. It's mostly like through word of mouth.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that's, that also results in a much better product too for your end users, right? Like that's one of the biggest things that, I mean, I'm a mechanical engineer because I was sick of how poorly designed things were, right? It was like, you can tell they designed it on paper in a computer or whatever, but then the person that actually designed it never put their hands on it, or they wouldn't have designed it that way because they made some stupid thing fit into a spot that was impossible for you to actually get into to replace or do any kind of maintenance on once it got to that point. And so software is the same way. I think that's why I like software so much is, the user experience of using a software is so nuanced and customizable, or can be nuanced and customizable specifically for these individual workflows at these different departments and all those things that if you don't have someone sitting there watching them do what their normal workflows are and peering over the shoulder as they do it and taking notes and asking questions, you get a much it's that turnkey experience where it's like, okay, I think I click this button and then I think I'm supposed. It's that change management. You're having to relearn this entire new thing on top of trying to get your job done like you normally would. So just being able to have, it's custom software development, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a nice thing because there's so many softwares out there, especially in the oil field, that are so poorly done from a UI UX perspective.
Yeah, UI UX is probably one of the hardest things.
100%.
Just in general. I mean, like.
Yeah.
I mean, all the data pipelines, like you said, like all that we can talk about Databricks or Snowflake or whatever. I mean, like those are really generally solved problems. Like you can kind of figure out. I mean,
most data engineers go and like spend 10 minutes. You're like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah.
I got it. Like, it's just like
when you get to that endpoint, then people are like, well, this doesn't do what I thought it was going to do. Like, or it doesn't work in the way that I thought. Or
this is the problem I'm trying to solve and it doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Or it's more than 3 mouse clicks.
Or can you give me an export to Excel button?
Yeah. That's a good segue. So most of the solutions models, things that we build, we obviously Power BI, you can analyze in Excel. So you can use Excel as an interface. You guys had someone on the podcast a while ago said Excel is never going away. And I was listening to it and I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm supposed to be progressive and a technologist and like a visionary and all this space. And I'm like, Excel's not going away.
No.
It's just so easy, right? For everyone to go use, and it can solve the problem really fast. So all the models that we create, if we build Power BI, Spotfire, Tableau reporting, there's an Excel, like you can, not a download, like it's connected to the data set. So you can pull in and do all your reporting. And that ironically is like in the finance accounting space, when we do projects there, you get all kinds of traction. It's like, wait, I can build this report in Excel and then just hit refresh next month? Like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. But a lot of people, you're looking at me, Bob, you're like, I'm crazy. A lot of people are like, this doesn't seem like it's possible. I'm like, no, I can't believe you're doing downloads of CSV files. That's what I can't believe.
Wait till you tell people you can put 10 million rows into Excel technically.
Yeah. We get lots of projects because people are trying to ingest a few 100 million records. And
but I mean, people don't realize through like Power Query and like they can load it to the data model or whatever. And you can build your pivot table off of a 100 million row table in memory. Like,
the education part is a big part of this job when you work in data analytics.
But I mean, but to your point, we've had a lot of success at GME. Just, I mean, meeting them in the middle. Like you can be the people that say, no, we're not using Excel. We're going to, or you can say, this is, you know how to do your job with this. And like, and again, instead of you going to your ERP and exporting this same stupid CSV every month and doing all these things, just hit refresh because I have an ODBC connection or a Power BI dataset connection, and it just works. Like,
it's one of those things too, from just a management perspective, right? Like, damn near everyone knows how to use Excel, and so hey, if you leave and we have to replace you with somebody, they probably know Excel, right? Like, and I think it kind of ties back to the UI UX stuff, but like serving people whether it's data, reports, whatever it may be on the software side, serving it to them and something that they're comfortable and familiar with is a much, much better experience than trying to get them to learn this new thing or go through this workaround workflow or anything like that.
I hope all the junior people at Dakota that have started listening to that.
Yeah.
Like we have this debate because like, oh, let's do it on Power BI. Or let's build it in Spotfire. I was like, oh, they won't use it. Like they need Excel.
Yeah.
Given who the audience is.
Yeah.
They're like, no, you don't understand. Like you can do way more stuff inside Power BI. Like, no, I know how Power BI works.
Yeah.
I know how it works. I'm telling you what they're going to want.
Well, I think, I mean, that's the other big thing too, is like oil and gas is also pretty unique in the fact that so many different departments need some, all, or a portion of so many different data sets coming from all of these sources. So like just the data architecture and everything on the background, all your models and stuff, like being able to serve information to a completions drilling engineer that also ends up serving some of that information to an accounting finance person, all from, the same group of sources is very important. And it has to be, like ideally it's all in one pipeline. It's coming from the same places. It's all been synchronized. The data is structured. It's cleansed. all your ETL is done. And historically that has never been the case. It's always been all these silos and CSVs or emails or, and that creates a huge problem, right? Like just having a standardized single source of all of your data that people can peel pieces of that off that they need and not being like, okay, well, hey, accountant, here's all 1,000 rows of our database, right? Like they're not gonna know what to do with that. And so that, again, it all just goes back to knowing and understanding the user is so critical for a lot of this stuff.
I think it's fine. I'll tell you a quick story. We were meeting with the IT manager 2 weeks ago, and he was asking us if we connected to data sources. So 40 clients, 20 years, 50 projects. Like I don't say we connected all of them, general, but a lot of them. He's like, so have you guys connected into Peloton? I'm like, yeah, it's pretty pervasive. We've
probably 2/3 of the clients we work with, at least. Like,
the question was pretty telling, right? Because I was like, man, we connected into it. Like we've connected probably 40 times this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what field varchar length do you want to know? Kind of stuff, right? Like we were pretty intimate with it. He was like, you guys connected into that? Yeah, we've connected into it. But there's lots of companies out there just starting down that path. So they just don't live in this space. They don't know about stuff. So hopefully we can keep helping them.
Wasn't it? I mean, like maybe it's a little slightly off topic, but there was a story. It was like, maybe I think it's an oil and gas executive brought someone in and was like, hey, I got an idea for like a startup. And basically your phone could like hear a song and it could tell you who sings it. And they're like, yeah, that's Shazam. Like that exists. Like, I mean, some people just don't realize what's been solved or what's done. Like
in that era now of like, there's more information than you can process.
Yeah.
Right? Like I grew up in an era where like you had encyclopedias.
Yeah.
And like you read them all and then that was it. There's nothing else to learn.
Like, you remember like, that's just, I thought about that the other day, like how that experience is basically dead, right? Like our kids will never have to go.
Yeah. I used to sit down with the baseball almanac.
There's more data now. Now it's about like choosing it's really important to choose
filtering
which data or which information you want.
Yeah.
Because there's more information being created than you could possibly digest, right? So
it's going to get
it's only going to get worse.
It's going to get weirder with all the AI stuff too.
Yeah,
because the AI is going to be optimized for being at the top of those results.
And that in our space, that's the like curating the right data. Mm-hmm. I mentioned 3 mouse clicks before. Yeah. Literally like 4 mouse clicks. And like there was a VP at work when he was like, I don't know how to. I was like, no, it's 1 more click. Click 1 more time. That's the answer. He's like, I don't know. That's 4 clicks. So we're like, okay, go back to the UI.
Yeah.
Change it so then it's 3. Yeah.
No, I mean, but if you're clicking buttons all day, like it sounds stupid, but going from 4 to 3 on a workflow that you're doing multiple times a day or a week or whatever, like it has an impact on the user experience, right?
I'd be retired. I'd be retired if I got $1 for every time that questions come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty critical, especially when you're a data worker and you're typing and clicking keys all day.
Well, that's the thing. Like developers can get so hung up on like, getting the feature done or checking the box or whatever, that a lot of times, I know everyone that's ever had any kind of development work has run into that, where it's like, give the developer a task and they bring it back and it's like, hey, it works. And it's like, yeah, but like the average person wouldn't use it this way, right? Like, or it's not intuitive, or it takes 3 extra clicks, or it's like understanding how the end user is going to be actually doing this and what they're currently doing is so important, because it can be a great software, but if it takes them twice as long to use it just to get to the end result, who gives it? They're not going to use it.
I think that's what's lost a lot, is like adoption is the measure of success for us.
Yeah.
Like, are we getting adoption? Are people using it? So either someone's using it a lot or a lot of people are using it casually. I think that's how you measure it.
Agreed.
So with that, I mean, do you have anything in the stacks that you deploy that's measuring, like, where you're tracking, like how much of a dashboard or a certain data set or whatever's being used?
So two ways. One, just on the data side. So if you're curating, like connecting to your own tables and building your own stuff, we'll query that.
Yeah.
And then provide stats on like how much it's getting used.
Okay.
And then specific to Power BI, we have Power BI usage reporting, which will connect, which is native already, but we actually connect into the like the back end of Power BI to be able to connect to you, even if you're using Excel. So even just doing queries in Excel, you can keep track of like who's using it and that stuff. And it's just something we can plug in, and people can use. And it's fantastic because you'll get someone in operations like, I need this. It's critical. I got 50 people. They're all going to use this tool. It's going to be the best tool.
Yeah.
Drop everything and work on this thing. And you're like, okay. And then you go build it for them. And then someone in another group's like, are they using it? It's like, they clicked on it 4 times last month.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, we're that's probably an evolution that we need to get to at GME. We have some stuff where we can see, which reports are being used most. But I remember actually my buddy Alex, I think I've talked about trying to get him on to the podcast. He works for Oxy. He's an AI manager now, but he was doing some really cool Spotfire stuff. But he and another guy, they wove Google Analytics into their Spotfire projects, so they could see where people were clicking, and when they clicked to this, where they went to the next thing. It was pretty cool. And then they had the stats in house to see like how people were even using the reports.
Yeah, I think it's great to be able to drive like, where should you be spending your time and your money next?
Yeah.
If you're getting good traction, I mean, I mentioned before those power users that are going to go really move the business forward.
Yeah.
If you can figure out where they're going and help them, or even see them doing something that's not that efficient,
or for
and be able
y'all,
to be proactive to go help them, like make that faster or better.
And then for y'all, even to say on a sales side, you can find your champions. Like in a way, I mean, like
knowing who's using it the most. And
I mean, like
how they're using it.
You want to be like nefarious big brother thing, but I mean, like you can identify these are people that, can help us, in the business or that believe in us.
Yeah. You can tell that in a 5-minute conversation.
True. Yeah.
People's enthusiasm for it, right? It's pretty evident most of the time.
Well, no, I mean, I got people in our accounting team. It's like, there's the 2 or 3, like those are the people, if I know I want to get some adoption, like they're all in. Like, and the other people, we're still working on them. Like, you should probably do this a little better. But like, there's like 2 or 3 and they're higher up anyways. So it's great. And they have that kind of push down effect, but yeah.
One thing I'll throw out there, cause it's one of the points of the podcast, but one of the tools that a lot of people use on kind of the web marketing side is called Hotjar, and I highly recommend it. But it'll give you heat maps of, it's cloud-based, but it'll give you heat maps of where people's mouse is, where people ran into, they fell off essentially, which means they couldn't figure out what they were supposed to do next. It'll give you anonymized recordings of the actual session to show you like, okay, they landed on your homepage on the website, and they clicked this button, and then they went over here. And then it looked like they were trying to click on something there, but it wasn't actually a link, or it was a dead link. And then they went back. And so it's like, oh, that's a really good way to to figure out, where people are getting stuck, a lot of times, or where people are spending a lot of their time and stuff. It's something I originally found out about when I was having those guys look at redesigning our RDS website.
Oh yeah.
I'd never heard of it, but like the UI UX guys love it because it gives them direct insight into how the user's navigating it, what they're doing, and because that's one of the hard things with developers, even on the front end, is like, hey, this looks like this really obvious button and this is the workflow, and the workflow, but you're so into it that you don't realize that someone who's completely fresh to it has no idea what they're supposed to be doing, just because you designed it for yourself almost, right? I want to get into a couple of things. One, AI, and 2, kind of the joys of oilfield data, ETL, and databases. Which one should we?
Well, jump in on AI. I mean, first thing I want to know is, when is AI going to replace Dakota Analytics?
Hopefully not soon.
Yeah.
I think just like you're joking, but it'll augment the work that we do.
Sure.
Like, we're already obviously leveraging AI for a bunch of stuff that we do. making us more efficient. Again, AI is a great tool. I don't believe it's the answer to everything.
No,
despite
for sure.
what most people say. So yeah, I think there's a place. It's growing. I think it'll grow at the pace that humans can adopt it. Right?
Yeah.
Like there's no limitations in terms of what we can do. So
what are some interesting things you're seeing kind of focused around the data and analytics and BI space with that?
You know, one of the most interesting ones is just like the migration of data platforms and being able to leverage AI to do a huge part of that. There used to be a lot of heavy lifting.
Right.
If you wanted to swap out from like traditional, Oracle SQL Server database and like move it to the cloud and go to SaaS and do that kind of stuff, that used to be a 2-3 year project at some of our clients to migrate everything. And I think now just so much opportunity to be able to leverage a bunch of the AI tools.
Yeah, what you're saying. I think Andrew was saying the other night at dinner, like, if he wants to convert, Microsoft SQL Server T-SQL to Databricks or to Snowflake, like you just plop it in and say, convert this SQL dialect to another one, like, which sounds ridiculous. I mean, they're very similar, but there's enough.
Be careful because like people are like, there's people in the office getting shamed. Like, why are you recoding that? Like, toss it into ChatGPT or Bing or it's like, hey, they don't know. Like, show them the first time. Don't make them feel bad. So,
but again, like that augmentation that it's again like Microsoft's calling it. It's a co-pilot. Like, allow it to help you. I mean, like, it's there. I mean, don't spend 3 hours banging your head against the wall. Like, go ask ask other knowledgeable people. Like you were saying the other night, you have a lot of really knowledgeable people at Dakota, so talk to each other, but also like, let the computer help you.
Yeah, exactly the same way as, the simple analogy is like you used to do like arithmetic on a piece of paper and stuff. And now it's like, just learn how to use your calculator.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. You don't need to know what the actual math is to do it. Same thing with AI, just which tool do you need to use? Because there's a lot of different tools, Copilot and things that you can leverage, sort of exploit doing work. But fascinating to me because we work across a lot of different clients and some people are really, really good and like they're churning out work at 300% of what Dakota could do. And some are at like 3% of what Dakota would do. Yeah. So you get the whole spectrum of like what people are leveraging. And that's why I say like those companies with a data culture that are really progressive are doing it at the 300%. Like, well, you got to win at some point. Like if you're running that much faster than everyone else, at some point you got to win this race. So I think one of the interesting things for us, and we've been doing more of like advisory services of late, where everyone's like, I just want to hear your perspective. Mm-hmm. Like, come in for a week, let us show you what we're doing, and then compare us to lots of your other clients.
Right.
Sure.
To see like where they fit. Because I don't think data people in general are that collaborative. I think we're collaborative in things we want to talk about, but not the things like the, dirty laundry on the floor. So like we're not collaborative about the things we don't want to share, and we don't get good perspective.
Yeah.
Like, Bobby's at GME, like they're the best data company in the whole world, right? I'm not going to say they're not, but there's probably like things where like, oh, you should look at that. This is kind of different, or you are really good at this. Like you said before, most of our clients think they're terrible at everything.
Yeah.
We're like, you're actually doing really well.
Yeah.
Relative to your peers.
When you don't have a perspective on like where other people are at. I mean, one thing that kind of came into my mind there too is like, what about like on the documentation side? Because I mean, and so do y'all provide like say data documentation, like a data dictionary glossary, and like have you even looked at some of like the AI stuff for augmenting that as well?
Yeah, for auto creating documentation on stuff. Well, we already have a bunch of stuff published. Remember frameworks, right? So you're going in, you're creating a standardized solution. So we're taking the general stuff, making a few tweaks to it, and then it goes. In terms of like functionality, like of the tools and stuff, the vendors like, TIBCO already provides a whole bunch of information. Like, here's how you do it.
Sure.
So we're seeing a little bit of that around the AI, but because documentation is one of those no one really wants to do it.
No,
it's like the perfect use case for a language model if it's good at it, right? Because no one likes doing it unless you're building something for yourself that you're going to need to go back into multiple times in the future. Just dump it and click the button. I mean, and most of that's the other thing too.
Explain this code to me.
Most of the time, it's better than what a normal person would have done because they wouldn't have documented it as well, potentially.
Mm-hmm. Or it's hard to have. Well, I guess
it depends on the person.
There could be. That I was going to say it could be maybe a little more standardized because the model produced it,
right?
But the model is also very It can be
Depends on what the creativity.
One of the big ones for us, Bobby, is just creating documentation like inside your code.
Mm-hmm.
So like as you're doing data integration across sources or like putting business logic into the code, typically tends to be like 1-2 developers. So it's not a lot of people doing it.
Sure.
And just being able to leverage AI to document what's happening and kind of like why it's happening.
Yeah.
So that, 6-12 months down the road, when someone calls Dakota and says, hey, can you support this isn't working? Like you can go in and look and find out really, really quickly what it is. And that's, it's changing the amount of time to do a support ticket from like 15 minutes to like, it could be days, right? If you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
you got to dive in. You're like, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah. So very useful in that space.
Yeah. I think it's also, just in general, like for the generalists like myself out there, being able to take, go find something on Stack Overflow and dump it in here and have it explain exactly what I'm looking at is just such a better way to learn, the different things, the different parts of code and, different ways of doing, of programming, because, it's like your typical workflow is very slow and kind of arduous at the beginning when you're learning to code and stuff, but most people just want to jump in and solve the problem that led them to try to figure out how to code to begin
You're like,
with.
no, how you format it matters a ton.
Right. And so, just being able to have that where it's like, hey, tell me what this is doing, or, explain to me in common language instead of, the loop and the class and the libraries and all of that stuff. Or even just like, can't tell you how many times I find write-ups, like full blog articles, how to do this with Python, blah, blah, blah. And then you go and, you copy the whole piece of code over and you hit run and you're like, oh, well, they forgot all the libraries that I needed to use to run this code. And then, but, now with AI, it can tell you that. Before, if you didn't know if you were brand new and you didn't know that it needed all these libraries, you would spend hours, I know this from personal experience, trying to figure out why it wasn't working, even though it's exactly what's in the stupid write-up.
Yeah.
And then I call Bobby and he's like, oh, well, did you install the libraries? No, I didn't, because I was rushing and trying to copy and paste and get this done, right? Like just being able to have those little things that will prevent you from wasting so much time is I think going to help a lot of people quite a bit.
Yeah.
Do you see any, tell us a little bit about what the kind of conversations with different operators have been like, or clients around the AI stuff? Are you getting any questions or anything like that from them yet? Or is it they kind of hands off and watching?
I think there's lots of interest. I think there's lots of like kicking tires.
Yeah.
I think trying to decipher the value proposition of doing some of that stuff can be really tricky, right?
For sure.
It really is, until a bunch of places have done it, published the results, talked about it conversationally and said, yeah, if you invest $1, you'll return $2. You get a lot of just kicking tires around stuff. So I wouldn't say there's how do I describe this? There's some going on for sure, but I wouldn't say it's pervasive yet. I think it will be in the next few years. If you just look at the general innovation curve of what it looks like, you've got a few early adopters
hype
that
cycle,
willing to take the risk and go do some stuff, but it's also a fairly expensive proposition to sort of get into, to start doing. So you're not talking about, a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 investment.
Yeah.
You're potentially 7 figures, right, to go do it correctly. So I think people are kicking tires. I also think the other thing is a lot of people are underestimating the amount of data quality work required, not like required, before you go do it.
Yeah.
So we all know the adage, 80% of every machine learning AI project is just do
data cleaning,
right?
Yeah.
And that's entirely true, because most of the data you want to use is from sources that don't require really rigorous data quality,
right?
Or there's lots of gaps.
Yeah.
You're looking at like, public data and stuff like that. So that's been the hard part. Like, let's go do it. Yep. Data scientist is like, yeah, it's going to take me 3 months. And then like a week in, they're like, it's going to take 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I think even just like narrowing the scope. I mean, right now you just see everything that people are doing with LLMs, and like there's any number of spots in your business that you could try to apply it, but like you really got to narrow a scope and say, like, I want to use AI to solve this. Like
I think the other thing is like, and maybe we shouldn't say this as data workers, but like most projects fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on how you define the criteria for those kind of advanced analytics projects, most of them fail.
Yeah.
Like they do not yield the result. And it's always interesting to see people spin it publicly.
Right.
That like, oh, we had all these successes. And I'm like, simple example. Someone's like, hey, we did this project. It's saving us $20 million a year in OpEx. Okay. It cost us whatever, $1 million. It's like, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's go look at your financial statements. Look at last year, look at this year, and it's not $20 million different.
Right.
So I'm like, well,
yeah.
Did you just decide to spend 20 million more somewhere else?
Was that the survivorship bias?
Yeah.
That's the one that worked.
So I think that's the, and again, like for us, I think it's like that, trying to be really candid with our customers or our clients to be like, I haven't seen anybody do it yet, John.
Right.
Like, sure, like we want to do it if you want us to hire us, but like, I haven't seen anyone be successful doing it yet. I think a lot of executives appreciate that candor.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
When it was $100, maybe you want to roll the dice and go do it. But
I mean, I think to your point, I mean, like you guys can do that, but you've got to lay the foundation of what you do as your core business first, because you guys focus a lot on data quality and getting the data in a good spot as well. Like,
I mean, so we'll do a lot of projects where it's like, hey, we just want to do data cleanup. And when you're ready, we'll turn it over to the data science group. Like we don't have, we're not engineers, right? So we don't have like production engineers or reservoir engineers on staff to do that work. We don't live in that space. That's a profession.
But I mean, and one thing I think, just kind of coming back a little bit, you talk about like these basically experiments failing. I think one thing that always gets lost when people talk about data scientist is that it's data science. So you have a hypothesis and then you're out testing it. And oftentimes you don't, it doesn't work the way you think it was going to work.
Yeah.
Like it's not a linear, like, oh, if I do this, I'm going to train a random forest model and it's going to yield $30 million.
Right.
It's not how it works. Like it is like,
there's a science to it.
It's very
the scientific
iterative.
method is at play. Like,
well, what kind of artifact are you trying to get to? Like, those are the things that you're trying to.
Yeah.
And when you ask someone like, well, how accurate or how precise do you want to be?
Yeah.
And the executive's like, I don't know.
When
would
really
I
good.
make a decision differently?
Right.
But then it's really good and it's overfitting and then it has problems like
it
later
really,
on.
You can, as we all know, you can iterate through models for a long time. So, and it's a hard thing for us to estimate that work as well, because there's like, I don't know when it's good enough.
Right. Well, and then you have the flip side of it too, where especially in our industry, is it's like you've got how many companies you've seen where they've got their black box AI that does whatever, and then the biggest holdup is they can't explain the results to the operator or to the client. Like there's no transparency into what's happening behind the curtain, so to speak. And then the operator's like, well, it can't be right because you can't even explain how the hell it produce these results. And
neural network with millions of inputs. And
right.
There's also lots of vendors, certainly for like subsurface, the drill complete, that kind of work, that lots of vendors that have invested tons of time and energy and money in already solving the problem. And I really think that it's probably, that is a product. Like I don't think it's a competitive advantage for you to go try to build something that might already be built.
Yeah.
So, and certainly like if you're talking about like, you've got some AI vendors that focus primarily on Permian. So like they're kind of the same wells. Yeah. So like to take that IP that someone's built and just buy it versus trying to build it, a lot of times is going to be a lot cheaper and better, assuming you have data quality.
We're talking to you, operators.
No, but I think that it kind of made something click in my head. I mean, like, because I think there's a lot of this talk about operators, build versus buy or whatever. But I mean, like operators, what I do and what your company does for operators, build systems. And I think any good company should have good systems.
Yeah.
But like they shouldn't necessarily be product companies, because then once you have a product, someone has to maintain that product. Someone has to support it. Someone, right.
There's going to be
continuous. And in the end, you can argue a Power BI report or Spotfire dashboard. I think those are products in a way, but not in the same sense of like, this is a software product where we've built this solution and now it's only ours, but now you have to support it for all the customers inside your business. Like you should be building systems that allow you to plug into, solutions like that. And
that's where we would lean much more towards that, right? Like we're doing the data integration, providing the data, providing the tools. We don't actually want to go solve the business problems. I know it sound a bit weird, but we don't want to solve business problems.
So that
it's
the SMEs can.
I think that all AI machine learning stuff requires a ton of business knowledge to be effective and to iterate through stuff. And we're focused on data and providing integration and doing that work, the foundational stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't, to date, like we're not delving a ton into anything subsurface. Like
being like opinionated of like, this is how you should be analyzing it.
I can tell you what a perforation is, but I don't. Don't ask me where you guys drill your
but I think a little bit on that side though too. I mean, I think don't undersell yourselves too. Like, I mean, you guys understand oil and gas workflows, and that's important as well.
enough to have a meaningful conversation. Yeah. And also I would say maybe more importantly, enough to know that we don't know.
Yeah.
Like don't ask me.
Just as important.
More important.
Yeah.
To be honest, right? Like there's a lot of people that would pad their resume.
Yeah.
Around like what they're good at and what they don't do. And
I mean, all the LLMs, right? They'll return something that could be completely
always
wrong
get something
and
back.
Be very, very confident about their answer in it, right?
Yeah.
No, that's I think I kind of agree. I think the approach, in my opinion, for anybody looking at language models, and especially on the operator side, is find a really small niche part of the business that ideally has really good quality data that's structured and you have a high degree of confidence in and might not need a lot of additional human context and input, and start with something small just to see. Because to your point, if an operator wants to come and put their entire data set of all of their ops and stuff into an LLM, that's going to take forever. And it's going to be this giant monolith monstrosity. And like, you're going to end up spending tons and tons of money just on getting on the ETL, right? Cleaning the data, processing it, transforming all of the stuff that we know historically oilfield has been pretty bad about. We have so much data, yes, but historically most of it has been unstructured, unstandardized, and it's, sitting in a
file cabinet,
and they're either in a file cabinet or in their data lake, which I know Bobby knows my favorite data lake meme, which is just a dumpster fire. And they're like, yeah, it's in the data lake. We just, pointed at that. It's like, well, just because it's there doesn't mean it's worth a shit. And it sure is. If it's not structured, it's definitely going to hurt the model more than anything else, right? And so I think a lot of people don't talk about how fundamental the data input is for the language model or any of the AI stuff, right? It's like, yes, these things exist, and yes, you can train them, and yes, there's potential that they have pretty good impact, but there's a lot of legwork up on the front side that you got to do in order to do that.
So I think that's the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Going back to your question, Bobby, is like so a lot of obviously one of the bigger players or people really invested into data will already be down this path. So
Right.
They can discount the next 30 seconds. But for the small kind of mid-range players, for them to be able to compete, they're going to have to delve into this space in a meaningful way and get access to data and do the data quality and the cleanup if they want to compete in that space to, like, how do we optimize plungers or whatever the problem you're trying to solve is.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be the next few years for us as the accessibility of tools.
Right.
And really for us, I would say the past 3 to 5 years, we've seen tons of cloud adoption. So because you've gone to the cloud, now you have unlimited horsepower. Right. You were always constrained when you were on premise, mostly constrained. Now you have this ability to really process.
If you decide you want to, you can do it.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
you can do anything you want to, right?
Yep.
You can spin up a whole new environment to do a POC in an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas like that used to be, wow, we got to order a rack for the
Right.
service. So being able to be much more scalable, you're seeing a lot more of those projects not suffer the technical constraints of like getting hardware to do work. It's just like, okay, what's the business problem? Can we justify it? And then can we go to a POC and try to solve it? I think you'll see a lot more of that.
Yeah.
I've got
the cloud allows you to iterate so much faster. Like,
well, and spin it up and
focus
spin
your
it down.
time,
Like
right?
it's just the cost.
that didn't work. Now it's gone. Like,
Right.
I've got a question for both of you, actually. What is y'all's, do y'all see, given, I think we all kind of agree that, these coming years are going to be really focused on that foundation, the data piece. Do y'all see it as a potential competitive advantage, especially for the smaller, mid-size, PE-backed companies, having a good data set so that when they do go to ultimately get acquired, which is what most of their goals are, that ends up being a differentiator for them to, their customer. They either get a premium or they have a lot of more interest.
Has anyone ever gone into a data room and said it was good?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that before.
Yeah. We brought on the guy Sean from Ensign, and then we talked to Andrew and like they had some really, I thought they had done a great job from everything I heard. Marathon basically threw it away when they acquired him.
Yeah,
we all the apps that he
experience.
built, all the stuff. We don't care. We just want the dirt and we want the oil underneath it. Like,
yeah, we have a client that bought another client of ours, and they did some really cool stuff. I thought it was really cool, and it just didn't fit into their data strategy for what they wanted to do. So they basically just turned it off. So they didn't get value out of it. I think more of the value is like pre-purchase for those small to big markets, where like someone's going to come in and say, hey, John's got a bunch of data. Let's look at his data in the data room and run it through kind of our analytics and our processes. And we've realized that we can carve out 50% on, or 50 cents on transportation.
Right.
Or if we group these wells, we'll get better throughputs or whatever it might be, right? So I think there's more value in that, in trying to find value and stuff. And I think if you're not doing it, back to competitive advantage, if you're not doing it, you're potentially missing out on those. Those opportunities, right? You're like, nope, it costs, $6 a barrel to get it out of the ground and stick it where I want to stick it. And I think if someone can do it for $5.50, especially at scale, that's where you're going to either pay a premium or realize value.
Where you make it that obvious. Just like you said, the usability of it, right? Like if you're looking at two companies and one has just a bunch of junk, it's not structured, there's errors and missing data and all of this stuff all over the place, versus another that has everything clean and nice and ready to go. It's almost like there's almost a prejudice that gets put, you're setting the floor essentially with what the people that are looking at that data are going to expect, right? And so you're not doing yourself any favors by having a messy data set versus your competitors being
and the game is simple, right? Like you better rock or you produce it cheaper.
So there's two things here. So one of them is I think just good quality data in all these systems that we're building tie into operational excellence, and when you are a better operator, you can prove that there's more value in this acreage. So then you're more attractive. Like, we came in and there were things that seemingly or clearly we did better than what Equinor was doing. And, oil price played a big deal early on that really helped us. But like, even before we drilled a well, we added tens of thousands of barrels just to our base by remediating wells and identifying those candidates. So, all of a sudden you just prove that there's more value in this than there was when we bought it. But to your point about the data room, I don't think it matters like in the data room, but I think, there were some data quality issues, especially say on our land side, like, and we were looking at maybe marketing some stuff, or whatever, like, and when you have your ducks in a row and you can provide that data quickly, you get all your ducks in a row so you can go to market faster, like while prices are in the environment. Cause like this can swing. We've seen it, especially lately, like, if you want to market, an asset at $90 oil, that's a lot more attractive. But if you don't have your data ducks in a row the way you want to be able to provide it, and then 2 months later, 3 months later, the prices go down to $65, well, now you're not going to get the price you want, and the opportunity's gone. So
how many deals are going through due diligence and 30 days go by and they're like, we might need to change the price.
So, I think there is that side of it where if you really have your ducks in a row, and I would say we could probably spend a whole nother podcast talking about land data and, the use of data in the land side. It's just, it's, but I think especially on that side, I think if operators have their ducks in a row on the land side, there's a lot of value there, and that more kind of time is money side of it, to your point, is like a data room kind of stuff.
Yeah. What kind of languages do y'all mainly use? Y'all using R and Python, or?
Not a lot of R.
Not a lot?
Sorry, Jess.
It's more Python. Yes. More Python. Again, part of this is just our preference.
No, for sure.
We're doing the same stuff, try to create commonality across Dakota so we can support stuff. Some more technical people than me would say they like Python better. Python, SQL, like DAX, Power Query.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the...
It's the only thing I don't like about Power BI is that I have to learn 2 new languages instead of just one.
It's okay because you can use ChatGPT.
Yes, you can now. That definitely helps.
And the tooling's gotten a lot better around it now. So like the Tabular Editor and DAX Studio.
They've
and everything.
definitely made.
Yeah, we use Tabular Editor all the time, but they made it better. It's still, it is what it is, right? Like,
but there are different purposes. And there's a little crossover, but DAX is for the kind of metric layer almost, really.
Right.
And then I love Power Query for massaging the data. And when we were talking earlier about Excel, when you can get Power Query into some of these accountants in people's hands, and then there's some traceability, a lot more traceability to what they're doing than trying to figure out, they have this X lookup that has this sum if, and we can go through and see each step, they filtered this, and then because there's sometimes, again, it gets out of my hands, but at that point I provide them the data set out of Snowflake, and then they connect to it, and then they're doing their Power Query stuff, and they're like, hey Bobby, this broke. Usually it's user error, but at least I can go within 5 minutes that we're stepping through and let's just step through the steps. Boom, this is where it is. You had to filter on to July and it's August.
Yeah.
You know, like you're missing a whole month of data. Like that's the problem. You know, but like it's traceable.
You say that like it might have happened recently.
Oh yeah. I mean,
No, I mean, that's
I won't name names, but no, I mean, but again, like Power Query is probably my favorite part of the Microsoft data stack, honestly.
I don't know how we are already at an hour, but
yeah.
You
but
probably gotta...
just real quick, I mean, on the Python thing, and I think we said before, is just such a Swiss Army knife. I mean, if you got people doing advanced analytics, but I mean, between any of the cloud vendors, they have a Python SDK. I mean, it's probably the most worth learning. I mean, like
commonality across all platforms. You're working in data. I don't know how you get away from without using it. So,
but yeah, I guess we're running up on the
go to the speed
round.
So we're just gonna pepper you with some random questions.
Okay.
Favorite board or video game?
Oh, I'm gonna say Roblox because my daughter's a huge Roblox player. So I'll go with that.
My daughter is on that all the time.
It's a problem at our house.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull my hair out what's left of it if she asks me for Roblox, or I've still
Robux.
Yeah, I've still refused to buy her any because I know it's just gonna be this fuel
Obsession,
the addiction. Yeah, but
favorite cloud data platform?
Today it's Databricks.
Yeah.
What about favorite open source anything? It doesn't have to be related to what you guys do at all.
I don't know if I could pick one.
Give me a couple that you like, or even just that you stumbled upon recently that you thought were kind of cool.
For open source stuff? That would be tough.
I'll tell you one to check out that I'm just kind of blown away by. It's called Open Interpreter, and I don't know how they do this, but someone found a way to get GPT-4 access to the internet and then created an agent on top of it. So you can, I can literally spin it up and say, I want to pull in my fantasy football team from ESPN, and then it'll say, okay, here's 3 libraries that I found that can do that. Which one would you like? Do you have a preference? And then you literally it'll just go through and start pulling the code and writing the code for you.
And what's it called?
Open Interpreter.
Open Interpreter. Okay.
It's kind of it uses the GPT. You need a GPT API key, but I think it uses part of the GPT interpreter add-on as well for the coding side. It's pretty slick.
You can check it out.
There's so many.
Who's your favorite follow on social media?
These are tough questions. In our space?
Sure.
There, or whatever. I mean, we had someone say Snoop Dogg on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Art Berman.
Art?
Yeah.
He has a lot of good.
I don't think I understand half of what he's saying, if I'm being honest, but I really like, it's very interesting.
Yeah. He's very
talking about
very data driven.
Forward-looking stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
What else? What is your advice to people getting into the kind of either technology, energy tech, or let's go with just like the data space and stuff, whether that's an operator that's like, man, enough's enough. Like we need to go do this, or just an individual that, is looking to get into that side.
Start.
That's
a lot of barriers to just not sure where and how.
Mm-hmm.
It's always it's not a straight road.
Yeah.
Just start. It's an education. It's experience.
No, that's one of the most common answers, which I think is crazy because it's the simplicity of the answer is also the beauty. Like it
can be scary.
It's
hard.
It can be terrifying. It's hard. You don't know where to start. You don't know who to talk to. You don't, which cloud provider do I use? There's 3 of them. I don't,
Doesn't matter.
Do it. Just do it. Yeah.
Well, and many people are passionate about
try them all.
Yeah.
Which providers and tools and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's like, I know, for example, AWS is like the most popular one, but like personally, I like Google's interface. I don't do anything on GCP other than I've got a BigQuery server, but just like little things like that, right? Just try it. You can't do that.
I think especially in this era where things are so rip and replace. I mean, spin it up, try it. Half time is a free trial. Build something with it, spin it down.
Yeah, you got 30 days.
Yeah, or free year of Amazon RDS or whatever.
Right.
Let's do last one. What was I gonna? Houston or Calgary?
Ooh.
Don't be wrong. No.
Will you guys let me leave the room if I say Calgary?
Yeah.
I grew up there, so
No, yeah.
that's going to be a home for me. But
Calgary in the summers, Houston.
spent a lot of time in Houston and Denver of late, and it's ironic how many parallels there are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can people find you guys? Find you?
Find me on LinkedIn, obviously. Website Dakota Analytics.
Marc with the C.
Marc with a C. Yeah. Our website. Yeah. Those are kind of the platforms. We don't tweet.
You should try it. You'd be amazed at the things that
we
can
do
come
another
from.
podcast on the value of tweeting. It's probably not for us.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
This flew by.
Yeah, it did.
It means it was good conversation.
Yeah,
so.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.